The galaxy was vast, but the Galactic Empire made sure every corner of it knew its name. For centuries, this coalition of alien races had ruled with an iron grip, expanding their territory and crushing any civilization that dared to resist. Earth, however, had always been different. Hidden in a remote corner of the Milky Way, humanity had managed to stay off the Empire's radar. Until now. It began with a signal. A massive transmission broadcast across all frequencies, impossible to ignore. The message came from the heart of the Empire itself, delivered by a towering hologram of Emperor Valon. His voice boomed like thunder as he addressed the people of Earth. "You have defied us for too long," he declared, his golden armor glinting menacingly under artificial light. "Your refusal to join our great union is an insult to the order we have built. Surrender your world to us, or face annihilation." The ultimatum sent shockwaves through every nation on Earth. Governments scrambled to respond, military leaders debated strategies, and ordinary citizens panicked. Social media exploded with fear and anger. Some called for surrender, others demanded war. But amidst the chaos, one name kept coming up: Dr. Ilara Voss. Ilara wasn't like other diplomats. She didn't wear fancy suits or smile politely at cameras. Instead, she preferred simple jeans and boots, her dark hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her reputation preceded her, a brilliant strategist who solved problems not with weapons, but with words. Yet what truly set her apart was her attitude. While everyone else fretted over the Empire's threat, Ilara seemed bored. When world leaders convened in an emergency meeting, they found her leaning against a wall, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. "So, what's the plan?" one of them asked nervously. Ilara shrugged. "Depends. Are we surrendering or fighting?" "No one's surrendering," snapped General Hayes, slamming his fist on the table. "We'll defend Earth to the last man." "Great speech," Ilara said dryly. "But before you start drafting soldiers, let me point something out. This isn't about war. It's about ego. The Empire doesn't want Earth because we're special. They want us because we said no." Her words silenced the room. Everyone stared at her, confused yet intrigued. "What are you suggesting?" asked President Lin, leaning forward. "I'm suggesting I talk to them," Ilara replied simply. "Face to face. No armies, no fleets, just me." The idea was met with disbelief. "You think walking into their territory alone will solve anything?" Hayes scoffed. "They'll kill you." Ilara smirked. "If they wanted me dead, they wouldn't have sent an ultimatum. They want to prove something to themselves as much as to us. Let me handle it." Despite their reservations, the leaders agreed. There was nothing left to lose. As Ilara prepared to leave, Captain Rinkale, assigned to escort her, approached her with a frown. "You realize how insane this is, right?" She glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. "Insane or efficient?" Rin shook his head. "Either way, I hope you know what you're doing." "Oh, don't worry," Ilara said, stepping onto the ship. "I don't care enough to fail." As the engines roared to life, Earth disappeared behind them. Ahead lay the unknown, and perhaps the key to saving humanity. But for Ilara Voss, it was just another day at the office. Ilara Voss wasn't the kind of person you'd expect to save the world. She didn't wear medals, give rousing speeches, or inspire crowds with grand gestures. In fact, most people found her unsettlingly calm in situations where others would be panicking. But that was what made her so effective. She saw problems not as insurmountable obstacles, but as puzzles waiting to be solved. Her reputation spoke for itself. Years earlier, during a crisis between two warring planets, Ilara had ended hostilities by simply pointing out how ridiculous their feud looked from an outsider's perspective. Her solution: a public debate broadcast galaxy-wide, where both sides were forced to explain their grievances. The absurdity of their arguments became apparent to everyone, including themselves, and peace was achieved without firing a single shot. It was unconventional, even controversial, but it worked. And now, Earth needed her more than ever. As the ship carrying Ilara and Captain Rin Kale sped toward Imperial space, tensions ran high. Rin, a battle-hardened veteran with scars both physical and emotional, couldn't understand Ilara's nonchalance. To him, this mission felt like suicide. "You're acting like we're going on vacation," he muttered one evening as they sat in the cramped mess hall. "Do you even realize what's at stake here?" Ilara glanced up from her datapad, her expression unreadable. "Of course I do. Billions of lives hang in the balance, but worrying won't help. Action will. And your action is just talking." Rin asked skeptically. "Talking gets results," she replied matter-of-factly. "People think war solves everything, but it's messy, expensive, and rarely fixes the root problem. Words can cut deeper than swords if you know how to use them." Rin shook his head, unconvinced. "Words don't stop ships from blowing you out of the sky." "They might," Ilara said with a faint smile. "But we'll see." Despite her confidence, there were moments when Rin caught glimpses of something beneath her calm exterior, a flicker of doubt, perhaps, or a shadow of fear. Late at night, when the rest of the crew slept, he noticed her staring out the viewport at the endless expanse of stars. Once, he asked her what she was thinking about. "Nothing important," she replied quickly, brushing off the question. But Rin wasn't fooled. Something weighed heavily on her mind. What no one else knew, not even Rin, was that Ilara had encountered the Galactic Empire before. Decades ago, while studying interstellar diplomacy, she traveled to one of their outer colonies undercover. What she learned there had shaped her worldview profoundly. The Empire wasn't invincible. Behind its polished facade lay corruption, greed, and internal divisions. If anyone could exploit those cracks, it was her. Still, doubts lingered among the crew. Many questioned whether sending a lone diplomat into enemy territory was wise, or even sane. Some whispered that Ilara didn't care enough to succeed, that her indifference would doom them all. But Ilara paid no attention to the gossip. She focused instead on preparing for the task ahead, poring over intelligence reports and crafting strategies tailored to each potential scenario. When they crossed into Imperial space, the tension aboard the ship reached a breaking point. Imperial patrols appeared frequently, their massive warships dwarfing the tiny diplomatic vessel. Each encounter brought new challenges, forcing Ilara to think quickly to avoid confrontation. During one such standoff, she calmly transmitted a message claiming they were delivering tribute to the Emperor. The bluff worked. The patrol withdrew without incident. Afterward, Rin approached her, his tone softer than usual. "That was impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "Maybe you're not as reckless as I thought." Ilara smirked. "Reckless? Me? Never." But deep down, she knew the hardest part was yet to come. The Empire wasn't just a political entity. It was a machine designed to crush opposition. And Ilara was about to step right into its gears. The journey into Imperial space was anything but smooth. Imperial patrols lurked around every corner, their massive warships casting ominous shadows over the small diplomatic vessel. Each encounter felt like a game of chess, except one wrong move could mean instant death. Captain Rin Kale spent most of his time gripping the controls, his knuckles white, as he navigated through hostile territory. But it was Ilara Voss who truly held the reins. During one tense standoff, an Imperial cruiser blocked their path, demanding identification. The ship's commander, a gruff alien with glowing red eyes, spoke in clipped tones, clearly suspicious. "State your purpose," he barked over the comm system. Ilara leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "We are envoys from Earth, carrying a message for Emperor Valon himself." She paused before adding, "I assume you wouldn't want to anger him by delaying us." The alien hesitated, visibly uneasy. Challenging someone claiming direct orders from the Emperor carried risks even for seasoned officers. After a long silence, the commander growled, "Proceed, but any deviation from your course will result in destruction." As the cruiser moved aside, Rin let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That was close, he muttered under his breath. Close. Ilara raised an eyebrow. Hardly. They're just doing their job. Predictable. Really. Predictable or not, these encounters tested everyone's nerves. The crew grew increasingly anxious, whispering among themselves about whether they'd make it alive. Some began questioning if trusting Ilara's plan was wise. She's gambling with all our lives, one crew member murmured during a late-night shift. What happens when her tricks stop working? But Ilara remained unfazed. For her, each patrol was an opportunity to learn more about the Empire's weaknesses. She studied their protocols, noting patterns in how they responded to threats. Their rigid adherence to hierarchy and protocol struck her as both a strength and a flaw. They follow rules too blindly, she told Rin one evening. Rules can be bent, if you know where to push. Her insights proved invaluable when they encountered another patrol, this time far more aggressive. The lead ship fired warning shots, forcing them to halt. As alarms blared aboard the diplomatic vessel, panic spread among the crew. But Ilara stayed composed, analyzing the situation with clinical precision. They're posturing, she said, pacing the bridge. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be vaporized. This is about control. They'd want us to beg. Rin frowned. So what do we do? Just sit here? No, Ilara replied. We play along, but on our terms. She grabbed the comm unit and addressed the patrol directly. Commander, she began, injecting just enough deference into her tone. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. However, delay will only anger Emperor Valon. I trust you don't wish to explain that to him personally. The tactic worked. The patrol withdrew after a curt acknowledgement, leaving the crew stunned. Rin stared at Ilara, a mix of admiration and disbelief in his eyes. You really enjoy messing with them, don't you? Ilara smirked. It's not about enjoyment. It's about survival. Despite her success, the journey took its toll. Days turned into weeks, and the constant threat of discovery weighed heavily on everyone. Even Ilara showed signs of strain, though she hid it well. Late at night, she often retreated to her quarters, poring over data and maps. Once, Rin found her staring at a holographic projection of the Empire's capital planet, her expression unreadable. You okay? He asked cautiously. I'm fine, she replied without looking up. Just thinking. About what? How fragile empires really are, she said softly. All this power, built on fear and lies, one crack, and the whole thing could collapse. Her words unsettled Rin, but also gave him hope. Maybe Ilara wasn't just playing games. Maybe she saw something no one else did. Whatever it was, he realized she was determined to use it to turn the tables. As the capital planet loomed closer, anticipation filled the air. The heart of the Empire awaited them, a place where countless diplomats had failed and never returned. But Ilara wasn't afraid. If anything, she seemed almost eager. The capital planet of the Galactic Empire was unlike anything Ilara Voss had ever seen. Towering spires of shimmering metal pierced the clouds, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with light. The air hummed with energy, a constant reminder of the Empire's technological might. As her ship descended through layers of security drones and orbital stations, Ilara couldn't help but marvel at the scale of it all. But beneath the awe-inspiring facade lay something darker, a cold, oppressive order enforced by fear. Upon landing, Ilara and her crew were escorted to a grand hall where they would meet Ambassador Zerk, the Emperor's appointed representative. Rin Kale stayed behind on the ship, his role as pilot making him exempt from diplomatic formalities. Good luck, he said before she left, his tone tinged with both concern and reluctant admiration. Ilara nodded, adjusting the strap of her satchel. Inside it, she carried nothing more than a datapad and a few personal items. Tools for negotiation, not war. Ambassador Zerk awaited them in the center of the hall, flanked by armed guards. He was an insectoid alien, nearly 8 feet tall, with iridescent exoskeleton plates that clicked softly as he moved. His multifaceted eyes glinted dangerously as he studied Ilara. "Dr. Voss," he said, his voice deep and raspy. "You are either very brave or very foolish to come here." Ilara smiled faintly. "Perhaps both." Zerk didn't return the gesture. Instead, he launched into a tirade about humanity's arrogance, accusing Earth of undermining galactic stability. "Your species is primitive, yet you dare defy the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever known." He thundered, slamming one clawed hand against the floor. Ilara listened patiently, letting him rant. When he finally paused for breath, she leaned forward slightly, her expression calm but piercing. "Primitive. That's rich coming from someone whose empire runs on slave labor and stolen resources." The room fell silent. Even Zerk seemed taken aback by her audacity. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the ambassador began to laugh, a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the walls. "Bold words for someone so outnumbered," he said, shaking his head. "But boldness won't save you." "Oh, I'm not counting on boldness," Ilara replied smoothly. "I'm counting on logic. You see, your empire isn't as strong as it looks. All those shiny towers, they're built on sand. One push, and they'll crumble." Her words sparked murmurs among the guards and aides present. Zerk narrowed his eyes, clearly unsettled. "Careful, human," he warned. "Insulting the empire can have consequences." "Consequences?" Ilara raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Killing me? Go ahead. If you think that'll solve your problems. Or better yet, take me to Emperor Valon. Let him decide whether I'm worth listening to, or just another annoyance to swat away." For a long moment, Zerk stared at her, his mandibles twitching in frustration. Finally, he turned to one of his aides and muttered something in a language none of the humans understood. The aide nodded and scurried off, leaving the ambassador to glare at Ilara. "Very well," he said coldly. "You will have your audience, but do not mistake this for leniency. Failure to impress the Emperor means death, for you and for your entire species." Ilara shrugged as if the threat meant nothing. "Understood. Lead the way." As they were led out of the hall, one of Ilara's escorts, a young human diplomat named Mara, whispered nervously, "Was that wise? Provoking him like that?" Ilara glanced at her, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Wise? Probably not. Effective? Definitely." Mara frowned, unsure whether to feel reassured or terrified. But Ilara wasn't worried. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every word, every action, was calculated to unsettle her opponents and expose cracks in their armor. And judging by Zerk's reaction, she'd already struck a nerve. Later, as they prepared for their meeting with Emperor Valon, Ilara reviewed her notes in private. Despite her outward confidence, there was a flicker of tension in her movements, a subtle sign that even she recognized the stakes. This wasn't just about saving Earth anymore. It was about proving that power based on fear could be dismantled. And if anyone could pull it off, it was her. The throne room of Emperor Valon was a spectacle designed to intimidate. A massive chamber bathed in golden light, its walls adorned with intricate murals depicting the Empire's conquests. At the far end sat the Emperor himself, perched atop a towering dais that forced visitors to crane their necks just to meet his gaze. His presence was overwhelming. His armor gleamed like molten gold, and his crimson cape pooled around him like spilled blood. Surrounding him were advisors, generals, and courtiers, all watching silently as Ilara Voss stepped forward. Ilara didn't bow. She simply stood there, her posture relaxed yet commanding, meeting Valon's piercing gaze without flinching. The Emperor leaned forward slightly, studying her with an expression that hovered between curiosity and disdain. "So," he began, his voice deep and resonant, "you are the human who dares speak for her species." "I am." Ilara replied evenly. Though I wouldn't say dare, more like offer. Valon raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Offer? You think your words have value here? They do if you're smart enough to listen. Her tone was calm, but laced with challenge, daring him to dismiss her outright. A ripple of murmurs spread through the court, some gasping at her audacity, while others exchanged wary glances. Even Valon seemed momentarily caught off guard. But instead of anger, a flicker of amusement crossed his face. You humans are fascinating creatures, he said, leaning back in his throne. Brash, arrogant, yet somehow capable of surviving against all odds. Tell me, Dr. Voss, what makes you believe you can negotiate with me? Because you need me more than I need you, Ilara shot back. Your empire is stretched thin. Your resources are dwindling. And no matter how many planets you conquer, you can't buy loyalty with fear forever. The room fell silent. Valon's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. He rose from his throne, descending the steps until he stood mere feet away from her. Up close, his power was even more palpable, radiating like heat from a flame. Yet Ilara didn't waver. She met his gaze head-on, refusing to back down. You presume much, Valon said softly, his voice carrying an edge of danger. Do you truly think humanity is worth sparing? That your pitiful planet has anything to offer us? Not presuming, Ilara corrected. Observing. Your empire isn't invincible. It's fragile. Built on lies, greed, and oppression. One crack, and the whole thing falls apart. And trust me, Emperor, Earth knows how to find cracks. For a moment, it seemed as though Valon might strike her down where she stood. The tension in the room was suffocating, every eye fixed on the two figures locked in a battle of wills. Then, unexpectedly, the Emperor laughed, a deep, booming sound that echoed through the chamber. Clever, he admitted, shaking his head. Very clever. No wonder Ambassador Zerk found you so troublesome. Ilara allowed herself a small smirk. Troublesome is my middle name. Valon's amusement faded quickly, replaced by something harder to read. Frustration, perhaps, or grudging respect. You play games well, human, he said, but games have consequences. If you continue this path, you risk not only yourself but your entire world. And if I don't? Ilara countered. What happens when your empire collapses under its own weight? Will you blame humanity then? Or will you finally admit that ruling through fear isn't sustainable? Her words struck a nerve. For the first time, Valon looked unsettled, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. It was subtle, but Ilara noticed, and filed it away for later use. She had planted a seed of doubt, and now she needed only to nurture it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Valon straightened and turned away. You've made your point, he said curtly. But understand this, Dr. Voss. I am not easily swayed. Leave now and consider yourself warned. Fail to convince me next time, and Earth's fate will be sealed. As guards escorted her out, Ilara couldn't suppress a faint smile. She hadn't won, not yet, but she'd rattled the Emperor, and in a game of power, sometimes shaking someone's confidence was half the battle. Back aboard her ship, Ilara Voss finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She sat alone in her quarters, staring at the holographic projection of the Empire's capital planet glowing faintly on the desk. The meeting with Emperor Valon had been intense, far more than she'd let on to anyone else. While outwardly composed, inwardly, she felt the weight of what she'd uncovered, and the stakes ahead. Rin Kale found her there, leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed. So, he began cautiously, how did it go? Ilara glanced up, her expression unreadable. As expected, he's arrogant, calculating, and terrified of losing control. Terrified. Rin frowned. He didn't seem scared to me. That's because he doesn't know how close he is to falling apart. Ilara tapped a few commands on her datapad, pulling up classified files she'd managed to access during her brief time in the palace. Look at this, Rin stepped closer, peering at the screen. What he saw made his eyes widen. Reports of resource shortages across Imperial territories. Internal memos detailing dissent among high-ranking officials. Even whispers of rebellion brewing within oppressed colonies. "Where did you get all this?" he asked, stunned. "I have my ways," Ilara replied cryptically. "The important thing isn't how, it's what we do with it." She explained her theory. The Empire's demand for Earth's technology wasn't about conquest or superiority. It was desperation masked as dominance. For centuries, the Empire had expanded relentlessly, consuming resources faster than they could replenish them. Now, cracks were forming, supply chains collapsing, loyalists questioning their allegiance, and entire sectors teetering on the brink of revolt. But why Earth? Rin asked, still processing the information. Why not just take what they need from other planets? Because Earth represents something different, Ilara said, her voice steady, but charged with conviction. We're new, unpredictable. Our refusal to join them challenges their narrative, that they're untouchable. If humanity survives, others might start thinking they can too. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Rin sank into the chair opposite her, running a hand through his hair. This changes everything. You're saying we don't just negotiate, we fight back. Without fighting. Exactly, Ilara nodded. I'm going to exploit those cracks. Leak intel to rebel factions. Strengthen alliances with moderates who secretly oppose Valon. Make them question whether crushing Earth is worth the cost. It was a risky plan, bordering on reckless. But Rin couldn't deny its brilliance or its potential impact. And if it works? He asked quietly. If it works, Ilara said, her eyes gleaming with determination, we don't just save Earth. We destabilize the Empire from within. Force them to focus on internal threats instead of external ones. But if it fails, Rin trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Ilara shrugged, as though failure wasn't an option she considered viable. Then we deal with that when it happens. Over the next few days, Ilara put her plan into motion. Using encrypted channels, she sent carefully curated pieces of intelligence to rebel groups scattered across Imperial space. Some messages highlighted weaknesses in supply lines. Others exposed corruption among top officials. Each leak was designed to sow discord and erode trust in the Emperor's leadership. Meanwhile, she reached out to moderate Imperial representatives willing to consider peace. These were cautious individuals, fearful of retaliation but desperate for change. Through subtle persuasion and promises of mutual benefit, Ilara convinced several to act as intermediaries between Earth and rebellious factions. The effects began rippling outward almost immediately. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueling unrest in key regions. Supply convoys were sabotaged. Protests erupted in previously loyal territories. Even some military commanders started hesitating, unsure of whose orders to follow. On board the ship, tension mounted as reports of chaos poured in. The crew alternated between hope and dread, knowing they were witnessing history unfold, but also aware that one misstep could bring ruin. Rin watched Ilara closely, marveling at her ability to remain calm amidst the storm she'd unleashed. One night, as they reviewed updates together, Rin finally voiced what had been nagging at him. You're playing a dangerous game, Ilara. What happens if Valon finds out it's you behind all this? Ilara paused, her gaze distant. Then I'll face the consequences. But if I succeed, we won't just survive. We'll rewrite the rules. For the first time, Rin saw fear flicker in her eyes, but also resolve. Whatever came next, Ilara Voss was ready. Ilara Voss had always been a master of multitasking, but now she was juggling fire. Her plan to destabilize the Empire required precision and patience, qualities that were growing harder to maintain as events spiraled out of control. The rebellion she'd ignited was spreading faster than even she had anticipated, and while it was exactly what Earth needed, it also brought new dangers. Every move she made risked exposure, betrayal, or outright disaster. Her days became a blur of encrypted messages, covert meetings, and calculated gambles. By day, she negotiated with moderate imperial officials who were secretly sympathetic to her cause. These individuals, though fearful for their lives, saw an opportunity in Ilara's proposals, a chance to reform the empire from within rather than watch it collapse entirely. She promised them amnesty and representation for their species if they helped broker peace between Earth and the rebels. "You don't have to choose sides," she told one such official during a clandestine meeting aboard a neutral trading station. "You just have to choose survival." By night, however, her focus shifted to the rebels, a loose coalition of oppressed colonies, disillusioned soldiers, and rogue factions, united only by their hatred of Emperor Valon. Through secure channels, Ilara provided them with strategic intel, urging them to strike key targets like supply hubs and communication relays. "Hit where it hurts most," she advised cryptically. "Force them to divide their forces. Let chaos do the work for you." The strategy worked, but not without cost. Imperial retaliation was swift and brutal. Entire planets suspected of harboring rebels were placed under martial law. Civilians suffered, and reports of atrocities began filtering back to Ilara's ship. Each update weighed heavily on her conscience, though she refused to show it. To falter now would mean everything she'd sacrificed, including innocent lives, would be for nothing. Captain Rinkale noticed the toll it was taking on her. Late one evening, as they reviewed updates from rebel leaders, he caught her staring at a list of casualties. For once, her usual composure cracked. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she murmured, almost to herself. "What wasn't?" Rin asked gently. "All this suffering," she admitted, rubbing her temples. "I thought I could control it, keep it contained, but every action has consequences, doesn't it?" Rin hesitated before responding. "You're doing what you have to do. No one else could pull this off." "Could I?" Ilara shot back bitterly. "Or am I just making things worse?" Before Rin could answer, an urgent alert flashed across the console. A message from one of her rebel contacts warned of an impending crackdown on a major colony suspected of harboring insurgents. Thousands of civilians were at risk. Ilara clenched her fists, her resolve hardening once more. "We can't save everyone," she said firmly, though her voice betrayed a flicker of doubt. "But we can try." She immediately contacted the moderates, using the crisis to pressure them into action. "If you want any hope of reforming the empire, you need to protect these people," she argued. "Otherwise, there won't be anything left to reform." Reluctantly, the moderates agreed to intervene, leveraging their influence to delay the crackdown long enough for the colony to evacuate. It was a small victory, but victories, even small ones, were crucial in keeping morale alive. As weeks turned into months, Ilara's double life grew increasingly precarious. Spies lurked everywhere, and whispers of a traitor undermining the empire reached even her ears. Still, she pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on her ability to keep playing both sides against each other. One evening, as Rin watched her pore over yet another set of intelligence reports, he couldn't help but marvel at her tenacity. "You know," he said quietly, "most people would have given up by now." Ilara glanced up, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Then it's a good thing I'm not most people." Her words carried weight, and a hint of truth. Whatever happened next, Ilara Voss was determined to see it through, no matter the personal cost. Ilara Voss had always known betrayal was inevitable. In a game as dangerous as hers, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. But when it came, it hit harder than she expected. It started with a message, a single encrypted transmission from one of her rebel allies. The tone was urgent, almost panicked. "They know," it read. "Someone sold us out. Be careful." At first, Ilara dismissed it as paranoia. Rebels were naturally distrustful. Whispers of betrayal often spread faster than facts. But then the attacks began. Imperial forces launched surprise assaults on key rebel strongholds, targeting locations only a handful of people knew about, including Ilara herself. Entire operations were dismantled overnight, and dozens of rebels were captured or killed. Back aboard her ship, Ilara reviewed the intel with growing unease. Someone close to her operation had leaked information to the Empire. The question wasn't if, it was who. Her mind raced through possibilities. Could it be one of the moderates she'd been working with, or perhaps someone within her own crew? Everyone had access to sensitive data, and anyone could crack under pressure. Captain Rinkale noticed her tension during their next briefing. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low enough that the rest of the crew wouldn't overhear. "We've got a mole," Ilara replied bluntly, tapping a finger against the datapad. "Someone's feeding the Empire our moves." Rin's face darkened. "Are you sure?" "Positive." She showed him a pattern of intercepted communications between Imperial commanders discussing rebel plans in detail. Whoever it is, they're high up. They know too much. The revelation sent shockwaves through the team. Suspicion spread like wildfire, poisoning relationships and eroding trust. Crew members eyed each other warily, questioning motives and loyalty. Even Rin found himself second-guessing those around him, though he tried to hide it for Ilara's sake. Despite the chaos, Ilara refused to let fear dictate her actions. If anything, she doubled down, pushing forward with renewed determination. "We adapt," she told the crew firmly. "Change codes, reroute communications, and tighten security. We don't stop. We can't." But the Empire wasn't done with her yet. Days later, disaster struck. During a secret meeting with a group of rebel leaders on a remote moon, Imperial forces ambushed them. Ilara barely escaped with her life, thanks to Rin swooping in with the ship at the last moment. The rebels weren't so lucky. Many were captured, and some were executed on the spot. When she returned to the ship, shaken but alive, Ilara realized the full extent of the betrayal. One of her closest rebel contacts, an alien named Tarek, who had sworn allegiance to her cause, had sold her out to save his family. Intercepted transmissions confirmed it. Tarek had traded her location for promises of safety. Enraged but composed, Ilara made a decision. She contacted Emperor Valon directly, bypassing intermediaries. When his holographic form appeared before her, his expression was smug. "I warned you, Dr. Voss," he said coldly. "Defy me, and there will be consequences." "Funny." Ilara shot back, her voice dripping with venom. "I was about to say the same thing." Before he could respond, she revealed what she'd uncovered. Evidence of corruption and incompetence among his inner circle, including names of officials secretly plotting against him. "You think your empire is untouchable," she taunted. "It's rotting from the inside. And I'm not the only one who knows it." Valon's eyes narrowed, fury simmering beneath his regal facade. "You overstep, human." "No," Ilara corrected. "I'm just getting started." Her boldness earned her a death sentence. Captured and brought before the Emperor once again, she faced execution. But instead of pleading for mercy, she turned the tables. With the entire court watching, she exposed Valon's insecurities and failures, shattering the illusion of invincibility he worked so hard to maintain. In the end, Valon spared her life, not out of kindness, but because killing her would make her a martyr. Banished to a remote outpost, Ilara vowed to keep fighting. The Empire thought they'd silenced her, but they underestimated one crucial truth. Ilara Voss didn't need permission to win. Banishment to a remote outpost wasn't the end for Ilara Voss. It was just another move in her endless game of chess against the Empire. The outpost itself was desolate, little more than a crumbling station orbiting a dying star. Its sparse population consisted of exiles, smugglers, and those who had fallen out of favor with the Galactic Empire. To most, it would have been a prison. For Ilara, it was an opportunity. From the moment she arrived, she began rebuilding her network. Using stolen Imperial tech and her own ingenuity, she set up encrypted communication channels that allowed her to stay connected to both rebels and moderates still loyal to her cause. Word spread quickly among the galaxy's disaffected citizens. Dr. Ilara Voss was alive and still fighting. The rebels, emboldened by her resilience, launched a series of coordinated strikes across Imperial space. Supply lines were sabotaged, military outposts overrun, and propaganda broadcasts flooded the airwaves, exposing the Empire's corruption and hypocrisy. Each victory fueled the growing unrest, turning isolated acts of defiance into a full-blown uprising. Even some Imperial soldiers, demoralized by dwindling resources and fractured leadership, began defecting to the rebel cause. Meanwhile, Ilara worked tirelessly to unite Earth's resistance movement with the Galactic Rebellion. She sent detailed plans to President Lin and General Hayes, urging them to prepare for the inevitable collapse of the Empire's grip on nearby systems. "This is our chance," she wrote in one message. "When the Empire falters, we strike, not with warships, but with unity." Her efforts weren't without challenges. Supplies were scarce on the outpost, and paranoia ran high among its inhabitants. Many distrusted her at first, seeing her as just another pawn of the Empire. But Ilara won them over through sheer determination and charisma. She helped repair broken equipment, shared food rations, and listened to their grievances. Slowly but surely, they began to see her not as an outsider, but as one of them. One evening, as she sat in the dimly lit common area of the outpost, a young alien engineer named Kira approached her. "You really think we can win?" Kira asked hesitantly, her voice tinged with hope and doubt. Ilara looked up from her datapad, meeting the girl's gaze with unwavering certainty. "I don't think. I know. Empires fall when people stop believing in them. And right now, the Empire is running on borrowed time." Her words resonated deeply with those around her, inspiring even the most cynical to join her cause. Together, they transformed the outpost into a hub of resistance, coordinating attacks and spreading messages of hope to oppressed worlds. Back on Earth, the impact of Ilara's work became undeniable. Reports poured in of entire sectors declaring independence from the Empire, while others demanded reforms. The moderates she'd cultivated within the Imperial ranks grew bolder, openly questioning Valon's authority. Some even began plotting his removal, seeing no other way to restore stability. As the Empire crumbled under the weight of internal dissent and external pressure, Ilara emerged as an unlikely symbol of unity, not just for humanity, but for all species yearning for freedom. Yet despite her growing influence, she remained focused on the bigger picture. This wasn't about revenge or glory. It was about creating something better, a galaxy where power wasn't wielded through fear. One night, as she gazed at the stars from the outpost's observation deck, Rin joined her via hologram transmission. His face was weary but proud. "You've done the impossible, Ilara," he said softly. "What happens next?" She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the distant light of collapsing empires. "We rebuild, and this time, we do it right." For the first time in months, Ilara felt a flicker of peace. The hardest battles were yet to come, but the tide had turned, and she knew the galaxy would never be the same again. The fall of the Galactic Empire was neither swift nor clean. It came in waves, chaotic, unpredictable bursts of rebellion and collapse that swept across the galaxy like a storm. Planets declared independence one after another, severing ties with the once mighty empire. Imperial fleets fractured as soldiers mutinied or defected to join the growing coalition of rebels and moderates. At the center of it all stood Ilara Voss, quietly orchestrating events from her outpost on the edge of nowhere. But even as victory seemed within reach, Ilara refused to celebrate. For her, this wasn't about winning. It was about change. The Empire's downfall was inevitable. What mattered now was ensuring its replacement wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. She worked tirelessly, drafting frameworks for governance, advocating for representation, and pushing for reforms that prioritized cooperation over domination. Her voice became a beacon of hope for countless species who had suffered under imperial rule. When Emperor Valon finally fell, betrayed by his own council and arrested during a coup attempt, the galaxy erupted into chaos. The power vacuum left behind threatened to plunge entire sectors into anarchy. Yet amidst the turmoil, Ilara's influence held steady. With her guidance, a provisional government emerged, led by former moderates and rebel leaders, united under a shared vision of peace. Earth secured its place as an independent world, respected not for its strength, but for its resilience. For many, Ilara became a legend, a symbol of defiance against oppression. But she didn't seek recognition. As soon as stability began to take root, she stepped away from the spotlight, disappearing from public view almost overnight. Rumors swirled about where she had gone. Some said she returned to Earth to live quietly among scholars. Others claimed she wandered the stars, helping those still struggling under remnants of the old regime. No one knew for sure, and perhaps that was how she wanted it. Months later, Captain Rinkel tracked her down. He found her living in a small, unassuming home on a remote human colony, surrounded by books and star charts. She greeted him with a smirk, as if she'd been expecting him. "Took you long enough," she teased, gesturing for him to sit. Rin shook his head, smiling despite himself. "You really are impossible to find." "Not impossible," Ilara corrected. "Just careful." They talked late into the night, reminiscing about everything they'd been through. Rin couldn't help but marvel at how calm she seemed, considering the scale of what she'd accomplished. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" he asked eventually. "All the sacrifices, all the lives lost." Ilara paused, staring out the window at the distant stars. "Every life matters," she said softly. "And yes, I wonder. But I also know this. The galaxy is better off without the Empire. That doesn't mean it's perfect. It never will be. But it's a start." Rin nodded, understanding what she meant. Perfection wasn't the goal. Progress was. And by that measure, Ilara had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Rin stood to leave. Before stepping out the door, he turned back to her. "You never cared about being a hero, did you?" Ilara smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the rising sun. "Heroes are overrated. I just wanted to change the game." And with that, she returned to her work, content to let history remember her however it chose. For Ilara Voss, the real victory wasn't fame or glory. It was knowing she'd helped create a future where no one had to live in fear again.